It is time! Metroid Dread. I'm familiar, obviously. Newest Metroid game out there. Heard it's pretty good, but curious to see how good.
I think it's really good in some ways and not so good in other ways. I do generally like this game, but I think there's some annoying things about it. But we'll get into it.
So Super Metroid's usually considered the GOAT Metroid game. Is there a consensus number 2?
I would say Zero Mission.
Zero Mission? I've heard that.
We've done a Zero Mission LP on this channel, and I've shown and explained why I don't particularly... I like that game, but it's not my favorite by far. In fact, I'm seeing a lot of people coming around on Fusion, finally. It took 20 years, but it seems like people don't totally hate Fusion anymore, which is nice. I always think Fusion is a great game. It has flaws, but I think it's great. Mine would be Super Metroid number 1. I guess. Yeah, I guess Fusion. I really like Fusion.
What about, are you counting the 3D ones?
I like the Metroid Prime games, but I don't think they hold a candle to some of the 2D games.
Okay.
It's Super Metroid, then Metroid Fusion. Maybe. I guess maybe Prime 2 and then this game.
So it up there.
Alright, so we are going to do a hard mode playthrough. If you're curious, Dread mode's a complete meme difficulty.
Oh my god!
One-hit deaths, no thanks. My one caveat is that I am using a controller with turbo, and we'll get into that as time goes on, but this game is a mash game. And I am at the point where my hands are so messed up, I do not want to manually mash for 5 hours anymore. So we're going to be playing hard mode, but with turbo. Now, it's not a huge deal because the blaster isn't like super OP until you get the plasma beam, which is like 60% through the game. In fact, the charge beam is the first power-up you get in this game. And the charge beam is pretty good. So I'm not going to be using turbo like all that much, but when we get the plasma beam, then I'll be doing that. Just for people to know.
Is that Metroid 2 Samus Returns good? The 3DS one?
So, the last 2 Metroid 2D games have been made by MercurySteam, who made the Castlevania Lords of Shadow games.
Interesting.
And Metroid 2 Samus Returns on 3DS, I think is pretty average. I would probably give it like a 6 out of 10. And I think that all the flaws that game has, this game improves on like all of them across the board, like almost universally. I think there's still some baggage that I'm not like the huge fan of the MercurySteam Metroid games. But yeah, Metroid Prime 2 and 3DS, not super great. Especially when it came out the same year as another Metroid 2 remake, which is like a 9 out of 10. Really, really good fan game.
Is there no voice acting in this game?
There's voice acting, sort of.
Is it like Banjo-Kazooie where they go...
There's an AI that talks to you through like text-to-speech.
Oh, okay. No, this is interesting. For a big AAA title, like, I like the art style, but just having like words flash on and be like,
I think the big thing is that the Metroid franchise and Nintendo in general is terrified of voice acting because of Other M being like absolutely horrendous melodrama.
Right.
Other M had full voice acting. They chose like the worst voice actor in the world for Samus. The dialogue was awful. It was so melodramatic.
Why not do voice acting but just have Samus be a silent protagonist?
That's pretty much what they do in this game.
Okay.
But there's...
I always imagine Samus being a silent protagonist, to be like a Gordon Freeman kind of thing.
Yeah. So there's text-to-speech, human speech, and then there's like a couple characters that talk in alien, which I'm fine with.
Okay.
But to be honest, Nintendo is, even for like Breath of the Wild or like Tears of the Kingdom, they do not have a good track record with voice acting. I think they really just hire people that are like as cheap as possible. Like they're definitely like anti-union. I don't know why I'm getting to this immediately, but Nintendo game voice acting pretty poor. So I honestly, I'm glad there's just no voice acting in this game, because I'd rather there be none than mediocre voice acting.
Why don't they just get the people who do the one-word responses in Ocarina of Time? Hey, you know, like I forget how the
That's what they did in Echoes of Wisdom. I think that's fine.
Okay. Well, yeah, the fishing minigame guy in Ocarina of Time.
Yeah. And obviously, like, a lot of their games still have, like, character, like, you know, grunts, like Mario and Zelda make grunts. But I think they just don't go full enough to make their voice acting any good.
Yeah. Makes sense.
So this is the, Dread is finally a continuation on the Metroid franchise. For the longest time, Fusion... Stupid remote, please work. For the longest time, Fusion was the last in the chronology since 2001, 2002. Because Other End is a prequel, not to the entire franchise, but a prequel to Fusion. And then after that, they were just terrified of releasing a new Metroid game.
Is Prime just,
Prime, I think, takes place, like, it's either before or after Super Metroid, but it's, like, in the middle of the timeline. Also, it's not canonical, so it doesn't matter.
Oh, okay. Lady.
Entering the atmosphere in T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7.
Yeah, the story in this game, it's, like, sort of subtle, but it's also, like, super fan-fiction-y. If you know anything about the Metroid franchise, it kind of feels like a Kingdom Hearts 3 moment where they don't introduce much new, but it's, like, just, like, this hodgepodge, like, soup of just, like, every concept in the entire franchise all in one.
Oh, like, remember this character?
And a lot of concepts, and I mean, in the beginning cutscene, they brought back the X, which were exterminated at the end of Fusion. It's like, remember the X?
Is this the part where we clap? When they show that? I always do like the
That elevator leads to the depths of an underground.
world building in Metroid.
Yeah, it's pretty nice.
You know what? You know what they would work actually pretty well? Like a Metroid anime, like showing like different planets. Almost kind of like it could almost be like a Dragon Ball GT kind of thing, where each like an episode is like a planet, like Samus going in and having to fix fix whatever problem.
Could be cool. I think they did like a manga for a little bit.
Yeah, they did. I don't know how that fits in or whatever, but the story's not great in Metroid from everything I know, but like the world building and a lot of the bad guys and characters are pretty cool.
For the most part, I mean, it's not like super like story focused, but I think most of the games are fine except for Other M.
Yeah.
Some people hate Fusion, but I think it's mostly because of a lot of dialogue. There's a lot of dialogue in that game, and I don't fault people for not liking that. But I think the story itself is fine.
When's this character getting into Smash? 15-foot tall Samus.
They put Ridley in Smash, and they just made him like a dwarf.
Yeah.
He's
Because Ridley's what, like, if Samus, would be like 25, 30 feet.
Yeah,
right?
like 30 feet tall. And yeah, they just made him like 7, 8 feet tall.
Yeah, I guess he would like...
Samus got Metroided.
He would canonically be like the biggest Smash character. Like, I know King K. Rool is pretty big, but he's not like 30 feet tall.
Yeah, Ridley would definitely be the biggest if they used like actual proportions.
I mean, if they used actual proportions, Sonic would be like, what, 3 feet tall?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I've seen
At
some...
least based on the Sonic movies. Like, they're always like waist high.
Oh, by the way, so when I was talking about Turbo in this game, so I'm a okay masher. Like, not great, but you can see I can shoot like this, but when you have Turbo on...
Dang!
And the crazy thing about this game, the way that this game is balanced, is that every single one of those shots registers if the enemy is vulnerable to the blaster. So, like, speedrunners is so impressive, like, their mash ability. Like, they can just, like, mash as fast as that as a human. I don't even know how they do it.
That's just asking to have,
But I'm not going to abuse mashing. I'm not going to do it for, like, everything. Just for some bosses and problem areas.
Dude, that's just someone wanting just pure arthritis by the time they're, like, 30.
Yeah. Like, my hands are already, like, I played Guitar Hero for 15 years, and all I do is I'm on a computer or playing games. My hands are so messed up.
I think if you would take, like, a month and not, like, do nearly as much of that, you should probably get better.
I try to. I mean, there are some times when I don't play games at all, and I just, like, I don't know, like, watch shows or something.
Yeah.
And I have been taking...
Access to network station. Well done, Samus.
I take a supplement called glucosamine that helps with, like, finger joint health.
Oh, that's
I've been
cool.
taking it for, like, years, and I don't know, it might be a complete placebo. It might be just be making it not as bad.
But I cannot account for why you lost consciousness. My readings indicate dramatic physical changes in you. However,
yeah.
these changes seems to have stripped you of most abilities.
Oh no, I got Metroided. What a shocker.
That brings me to your assailant. I am checking the Federation database against your video log. It appears
They should do a Metroid game where you keep all the stuff.
So already this plot is pretty fanfiction-y, because, like, for the longest time, all the Chozos have been, like, extinct. The Chozos raised Samus, and, like, Samus is, like, they put Chozo DNA in her, so that's why she can always interface with, like, all the Chozo artifacts and technology. We're on this mystery planet that has a Chozo that attacked us, and there's Chozo technology everywhere. Just okay. And also, she's part Metroid now.
So she is part everything.
She is I mean, if you really examine her backstory, she is like a Giga Mary Sue.
One final thing.
Wasn't she, like, raised by Chozos?
Yeah.
Okay.
She was raised by them and then got some of their DNA, and after she got infected by the X infusion, she had to get a Metroid DNA infusion to counteract that.
Heh.
So one of the big things that the MercurySteam games add is this counter move. It's a lot better in this game. In Metroid 2, it's one of the parts that I really don't like about it, because, like, they nerf your Buster so hard.
So they expect you to use that a
like,
lot.
for everything. In this game, it feels like they still nerf your Buster, but it's not as bad. Also, it feels a lot better, because you can do it, like, in the air now, where you couldn't do that in Metroid 2. So yeah, this game is a lot better than Metroid 2. It also doesn't help that Metroid 2 is kind of a fundamentally flawed game, because it's very monotonous. Like, the entire, like, conceit of the game is defeating every single Metroid on that planet. So
That's right.
You
Well,
fight,
but that's the original game too.
you do fight Metroids at the end of Metroid 1, like, before Mother Brain, but it's not like you don't have to, like, kill every...
No, but I meant Metroid 2 on Game Boy. That's the whole deal.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, Metroid 2 on Game Boy is, like, a bad game. Metroid 2 Remake is definitely better. It's funny, because I think Super Metroid's a 10 out of 10 masterpiece, but Metroid 1's like a 4 out of 10, Metroid 2's like a 5 out of 10. The glow up from Metroid 2 to Metroid 3 is insane. So these are one of the main enemies of the game, the Emmys. They're these robots that are basically invulnerable to everything except for one attack. And they hunt you down in specific zones. They're okay. They definitely wanted to recreate the SAX like hunt parts in Fusion, where the X they infected Samus's old power suit, and then it starts walking and, like, chasing you down. And there's some really cool tense moments because of that.
If you think about it, Zelda is kind of similar to Metroid. First one, Zelda 1 and Metroid 1 are, like, very important games that changed a lot, but are really tough to stomach. The second one, weird, and, has a certain fan base, but definitely not the greatest games. And then the third one are GOATs, Link to the Past,
true.
and, honestly, kind of the same thing with... I know this has been said a million times before, but with a lot of other Nintendo franchises, like Mario 1 is probably the most important game ever made, but it's like let's be honest with ourselves, it's kind of hard to stomach. Like, it does a lot of stuff real good, and I give it super credit for, I mean, coming out in 1985, like, way ahead of its time. But if you were like, yo, let's play Mario Brothers 1, nowadays I'd be like, I'm good.
Yeah, it's fine, but like
it's fine.
I'd rather play like Mario 3 any day.
And then 2 is a weird one, at least for, for both American and Japanese.
I still like it, but I hardly consider it like a Mario game.
And then 3 is
it really isn't.
the GOAT, or an amazing game.
I still think Mario 3 is the best Mario game.
And if you think about it, Castlevania, the same thing. Castlevania 1, I like it, but it's very simple and it's really difficult. Then you have Castlevania 2, weird one, some people like it, some people hate it. And then Castlevania 3, if you count the Japanese one, then you have potentially the GOAT Castlevania game. Because Castlevania 3 is an amazing game, it's just the American version is way too hard. That is its only and its fatal flaw. But the Japanese one is a lot easier, so it's goated. Very weird, Nintendo.
Alright, so we're going against the first actual Emmy. And I think these areas are kind of cool, but the problem is that these are very self-contained areas. The Emmys don't patrol anything outside of this area. And because of that, there's barely any enemies in here or things to see or do. It's mostly just running away from the Emmys. So it's a huge self-contained area because there's like 6 of them. And they just sacrifice a lot of the map real estate for these zones. And it's cool, there's some cool moments for them, but I think they could have done this a little bit more naturally. I am though.
Yeah, I like the idea of that. That's pretty cool.
It's a cool.
It's a
I
nice set piece.
I generally like it. I just think they could have done a little bit better. Like, the one game I really want them to remake is actually just Metroid Fusion, because Metroid Fusion's a great game, but, like, the SAX encounters are all scripted, and, like, there's only a couple of them in the entire game. But if they made a remake of that game, and, like, expanded the SAX AI, and, like, made the encounters more dynamic, man, that'd be such a good game. That'd be the best Metroid game.
Send out a pulse to detect vibrations in the air within a certain range. Upon detecting vibrations, an enemy enters surveillance mode to track their source. Stay out of its line of sight when this happens. Otherwise, the danger to you increases. An enemy that has seen you will begin pursuit. Part of the pursuit protocol is to seal the enemy zone exits. You will be trapped and sought to survive.
Rep.
You must leave its range of
That's a cool gimmick of it. If you get in their line of sight, they will still exit, so you have to outrun them. And they are very fast and very agile, so overall, they're a cool enemy.
So if they do capture you, it's game over, automatic?
You do have a very small chance to get away from them. We actually did it the first Emmy that grabbed us. They gave us a tutorial on how to do it, but it's very hard actually doing it in game. I would say you probably have 10 frames to do it. There's a little flash on screen. You push the X button and you can get away from it. But that makes it sound way easier than it actually is.
Yeah, I can see what people were kind of talking about how this has horror elements.
Yeah.
Not a horror game, but I could definitely see that.
Fusion's definitely more of the most horror game, but this game's
I mean, if you think about
has it.
Metroid as a series has a lot of horror elements, just exploring weird, odd planets with unspeakable creatures. You're alone. I think almost all of them, it's just you, except for Other M, which has, I forget the guy's name.
Yeah, and there's some games that, Metroid Prime 3, I'm not the hugest fan of, and they have a lot of characters, the Federation radioing you all the time and other hunters around. The sense of isolation is just not there in Metroid Prime 3.
I think that's a big thing of Metroid. I think that's the thing that kind of separates it from Castlevania. Because Castlevania, no matter who you're playing as, you normally have other characters that are around doing stuff. Whether it's Dracula or whatever bad guy, you'll see him once in a while and they'll be like, hey, I'm gonna beat you. But for Metroid, it's just Samus, isolated, and then these creatures.
Yeah, just incredibly aggressive, vicious creatures.
Yeah.
In fact, the entire Like, Metroids are supposed to be, like, the apex of, like, predators. Like, they're the galaxy apex predator.
I kind of find that hard to believe. Like, yeah, they go on you and then they suck your life force, but, like, compared to, like, Ridley or, like, that big fat thing in Super Metroid...
I think it's mostly because of... they show in Metroid 2 a lot, where if you let them alone, they're just going to devastate the entire planet. And then they evolve and grow into, like, Gamma Metroids and Omega Metroids. They're, like, constantly evolving, and they can just suck your energy, like, really, really fast.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. I'm also not ridiculously knowledgeable of the series, so that's, yeah.
In fact, the Metroid Fusion, the X start propagating again, and I think it's SR388. Might be a different planet. I'm not the Metroid lore god. But they start propagating again because the Metroids are gone. Like, the lore is that the Chozo basically unleashed the Metroids on SR388 to combat the X specifically. And the X are also, like, incredibly powerful organisms. They're kind of the complete opposite of the Metroids, where the Metroids are, like, the apex predator just by existing. But the X can assimilate and absorb all the good traits of any creature it encounters. And it's continually evolving and gets smarter and smarter. But it's only strong because of absorbing other things, where the Metroids are already perfect. So it's a cool juxtaposition of the X being, like, as strong, but in a completely different way.
Remember Metroid Federation Force?
Yeah, one of the most tone-deaf games ever made. 6 years after Other M, people are like, is Metroid dead? And then just randomly they're like, hey, here's your stupid, like, cartoony spin-off on the 3DS. You like? Oh, you don't? Oh, okay. I can't believe I didn't see this coming.
Very weird. Everything about it is bizarre.
Like, the game itself is fine.